Welcome back to Lesson 3 of our Paper 1 Introductory Topics in Psychology course. Today we're going to look at what is psychology. And on completion of the learning objectives of this session, you should be able to know what is psychology, the aims, subject matter and methods, and the scientific process, including the role of peer review. Okay, if you're using our teacher resource pack, I'm going to use this poster for this session. So, what is psychology? Psychology is the scientific study of behaviour and mental processes. And that's the aim of psychology. The aim is the scientific study of the behaviour of mental processes. Psychology uses scientific methods found in other disciplines, such as physics, to explain human behaviour. Researching the role of genetics in human behaviour. And psychology examines the structure and functions of the brain, nervous and endocrine systems to see how they affect behaviour. Psychology measures data that can be gathered and observed objectively. In psychology, we use a hypothesis and theories to explain why we behave the way we do. And we look at how behaviour differs across cultures and genders. So there's been a long debate about, is psychology a science? Well, there's no longer a debate about, is psychology a science? Psychology is a science. And this course will explore the reasons why psychology is a science, i.e. for all the reasons on the actual page displayed. So, coming back to our workbook, as you can see on page 7, that covers what is psychology. On page 8, we've got a question for you. Define what is meant by the term psychology. You should include the aim and who or what is studied, brackets, i.e. the subject matter. This is for 2 marks. So AQA Psychology could ask you a question on the exam, i.e. define what is meant by the term psychology, 2 marks. Well, if we come across here to page 7, we take a little look and we choose 2 points, i.e. the question asked to include the aim, so we should include the aim, and the aim of psychology is the scientific study of behaviour and mental processes. And who or what is studied? So any of these. So what is studied? Well, genetics is studied. The nervous system is studied. Behaviour across different cultures and genders is studied. Any of those. So choose 2 things and include that in your answer. It's as simple as that. Okay? So don't look at these questions too deeply. Okay, moving on. On page 8 also, we've got a research study. So obviously to develop your independent learning skills, to develop your ICT skills, we're going to ask you to do little research studies. And I'm going to post these questions on our Twitter sites as well. And I expect some form of feedback from you. Okay? And as I've already said, you can go to our website, www.advancedsuccess.co.uk, and I'm available there for live chat. Okay? Obviously, if you're not using one of our workbooks, you'll get more benefit by downloading one of our workbooks. So, what is psychology then? Well, psychology is the scientific study of human behaviour. So moving on to the second learning objective then. The scientific process, including the role of peer review. So, in order for psychology to be a science, it has to follow the similar scientific process to other disciplines. And Popper in 1959 stated the scientific process follows a logical step-by-step process from initial identification of a gap in current knowledge to the eventual development of a theory. Now Popper wasn't just talking about psychology here, Popper was talking about all sciences. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to gauge psychology across and compare it with the other disciplines. So, firstly then, the scientific process needs to identify a problem and formulate an aim. An aim, as you can see by the key terms box there, is a statement of what the researcher intends to find out. We then move on to developing a clear and testable hypothesis. Again, you'll come across the term hypothesis many times within the course, and you will have to be able to formulate an appropriate hypothesis as part of some of the questions on the exam papers. So a hypothesis is a precise, clear and testable statement about the outcome of an investigation. Precise, clear and testable is obviously the key factors in any statement you're going to make. The third step is choose an appropriate experimental method to test the hypothesis. An experimental method might be a lab experiment, a field experiment, a natural experiment. We'll cover these later in the course. The next step, analysis of the results and draw conclusions. Conclusion is the last part of a research paper, drawing everything together and tying it into the initial aim of the research. So in other words, I mean, you look back to the aim and then you sort of like make a conclusion whether or not your research has fulfilled them. Moving on then, replication of the original study to different situations. So in other words, I mean, we want to be able to replicate the study to different cultures, different settings, different time periods. And if we get the same results, then the research is said to have reliability. And the final step then is to formulate general laws and theories of human behaviour. Importantly, we're in the game of actually trying to formulate general laws and understand human behaviour. If you think back to the previous page, here, looking at how behaviour differs across cultures and gender. So in other words, we need to sort of like make comparisons, and if there are general laws, then something is said to have validity. So looking at page 10 then, imagine what you want to investigate. If people with blue eyes are more sociable, write an aim and hypothesis for your study and choose an appropriate experimental method. So I want you to have a go at this. Okay, imagine that you want to investigate if people with blue eyes are more sociable. Write an aim and hypothesis for your study and choose an appropriate experimental hypothesis. Please feel free to actually post your answer on our Twitter site at Psych Exam Help, Twitter, Psych Exam Help. Many of you are already there. If you're not, then obviously, I mean, you know, log on there. So if you're watching us on Facebook or if you're watching us on YouTube, follow us on our Twitter site and follow us on our Facebook site. So moving on, the final section of this is peer review. We're going to do this now because it fits in just at this point. It's covered in various other areas, i.e. paper 2 and paper 3, but this just ticks the box. And obviously, if you look back to the learning objective, the scientific process, including the role of peer review. So going back, as you know, the scientific process involves assessing the quality of research before it's published. This is known as peer review. This means that a research paper is checked by other experts within the same field to ensure its validity, originality and significance. Right then, so little question in our workbook here. What is meant by peer review? 2 marks. Well, a little bit of a clue here. It's just here. Okay, there's no sort of like trick question. It's just here. As I said at the very beginning, in the first lesson, we give you just what you need to get you the marks. So the answer, peer review, is when a research paper is checked by other experts within the same field to ensure its validity, originality and significance. 2 marks. winner. So, why is peer review important? Well, the peer review process is important to the scientific process for the following reasons. And I want you to take a little read of this. It prevents fraudulent findings being published, i.e. originality, part of the definition above. Findings can be taken seriously as the published research has been scrutinised by experts. So in other words, you've given your research over to fellow colleagues, fellow experts, and they scrutinise it to see if there's any errors. Scrutinise the experts with the same field to make sure that all the elements within the scientific process have been followed accurately. I.e., is it testing what it's supposed to be testing? Validity. It improves the scientific process as weaknesses and errors can be identified and rectified to improve the research paper and prevent irrelevant or unacceptable claims being made. Again, validity. Is it testing what it's supposed to be testing? A paper that's been peer reviewed will tell you what other experts say about it and usually indicate how important the findings and conclusions are with a particular research area, i.e. significance. Again, all of those terms, validity, originality, and significance, part of the original definition. So, how does the peer review process work? When a researcher finishes their work, they write a paper presenting their methods, findings, and conclusions. You'll do this many times through the course. This is sent to a scientific journal to be considered for publication. If the journal's editor thinks it's suitable for their journal, they send the paper to other scientists within the same field, asking them to comment on its validity, examine the significance, determine its originality. So, moving over to page 12, for 4 marks, explain 2 reasons why peer review is an important part of the scientific process. Right then, you go over to the other page, you choose 2 of the reasons, and that gets you 4 marks. 4 marks. So, multiple choice question, because as you know from the first lesson, questions can be multiple choice. Which statement best describes the peer review? A, peer review is the process where you ask other psychologists to look at the research paper and give you feedback. B, peer review is the process of publishing your research on the internet and asking for feedback. C, peer review is the process of subjecting a piece of research to independent scrutiny by other psychologists working in a similar field who consider the research in terms of its validity, originality, and significance. Peer review is the process where your friends look at your research and make comments. So you're looking for the best description here. And I'll post this question on Twitter and I'll expect you to sort of give some feedback. Okay, so think about that one. And that's it for today. The next lesson, and that's it for the introduction to psychology. In the next session, we will start social influence. Okay, take care.